Hello everyone, Happy New Year. I hope that you all had a great end to 2024. Today I wanted to take some time before 2025 starts and look back at the year of books that I've read. In 2024 I read a surprisingly large number of books for me, which was 85 books. I was reading 7 or 8 books a month. I did a video earlier this year on the first 6 months, my favorite books from the first 6 months of the year. So this is the companion to that, my favorite books from the second half of the year. So I have 7 books that I want to talk to you about today. The first 2 of 7 books that I have are both by the same author, T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher writes fantasy. T. Kingfisher writes fantasy. A lot of my criticisms of T. Kingfisher are that she does write a lot of shorter works, a lot of novellas, that I feel like need a little bit of something extra to flesh them out. But these first 2 books I feel like are well fleshed out enough to stand on their own, and I didn't have that same concern with. So the first one is Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. This was published in 2018. It is a romance novel that takes place in a fantasy world. T. Kingfisher has a series of connected, she has a world, I guess, of connected series, the world of the White Rat. So Sword Heart is kind of a standalone. It's unclear to me. It's possible that there's a series planned around it. There are other characters that I could see having their own spin-off series. And I think I'm just going to read you part of the description because there's no sane way for me to describe this book. Hala is a housekeeper who has suddenly inherited her great-uncle's estate and, unfortunately, his relatives. Sarkis is an immortal swordsman trapped in a prison of enchanted steel. When Hala draws the sword that imprisons him, Sarkis finds himself attempting to defend his new wielder against everything from bandits and roving inquisitors to her own in-laws, and the sword itself may prove to be the greatest threat of all. So it's a romance novel. One of them is a sentient sword and one of them is a lady. It does start off with this is going to sound like an oxymoron, but a lighthearted suicide attempt, so that you are aware of that if that's something that is concerning for you. The second book that I have by T. Kingfisher, I read shortly after that. This one was published in 2024, A Sorceress Comes to Call. A Sorceress Comes to Call has, I would say, a combination of horror and cozy vibe. At heart is a cozy book, but it has horror elements into it, and especially kind of psychological horror, I think I would say. Stuff that, horror about stuff that plays with your mind and having control over your own mind and things like that. I'll read you the blurb for this one also. Cordelia knows her mother is... Oh, this is really long. Never mind, I'm not going to redo this. Essentially, it is a fairy tale retelling of, I think, Goose Girl, but not in a very faithful way. Yeah, I think it's a fairy tale retelling of Goose Girl, but not super strictly adhered to. I think it's more of uses Goose Girl as a jumping off point to explore. I really liked the book. I like cozy vibes, and the horror vibes were, it's kind of like having a little bit of acidity in a sweet dish, which made it nice. So the next book that I have is a sci-fi kind of horror book called Saturation Point by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It was first published in 2024. It is a novella. It is not very long. Like I said, it is a sci-fi horror. It takes place in a future version of Earth in which climate change has become real bad, I think is the way to describe it. And there is a zone on Earth which is uninhabitable. It is near the equator, and it has become too hot and humid for human life to be sustained. Our protagonist is a researcher. She worked there many years ago with her advisor on a research mission, and one day she is randomly and suddenly asked to go back again, and for mysterious unknown reasons, and we uncover what those reasons are, and we uncover more about the mysteries of this area of the world. Next up, we have another sci-fi. This is a sci-fi mystery. This year I've really gotten into mysteries. I haven't read very many classic mysteries that just take place in our world, like normal mysteries. I haven't read very many normal mysteries, but I've been really into mysteries that are either sci-fi or fantasy mysteries. So I've done a lot of reading of those. And so Drunk on All Your Strange New Words is by Eddie Robson, is a sci-fi mystery that takes place in a world in which aliens have been discovered. They live on Earth. There is cultural diplomacy and things like that. And our protagonist is a translator for the cultural attaché to Earth. So she lives and works with an alien, and she translates for him. But the interesting thing about this language is that the side effects of translating for this alien is that it does something to your brain and makes you drunk. And so when there's a murder, our protagonist must investigate it and try to clear her name. And it was an interesting. I loved the world building. I thought it was very interesting, and I really love a classic mystery structure that has some unique flavor to it. And so that's precisely what this book was. Next up, back into fantasy, we have The Maid and the Crocodile by Jordan Ifuko. So this was published in 2024. So The Maid and the Crocodile is a fantasy novel. It's in Jordan's Raybearer series, but I had never read any of the previous. I think it's a standalone within that series. I don't think you need to have read the books previous to it to find the book interesting or whatever. It takes place in an African-inspired fantasy world, and so there are a lot of elements of African folklore and African mythology that are a part of this world, which was very interesting for me. It had some things to say about the world and about those who have privilege and those who don't have privilege. Small Sadie needs a job, preferably as a maid, with employers who don't mind her unique appearance and unlucky foot. But before she can be hired, she accidentally binds herself to a powerful being known only as the Crocodile, a god rumored to devour pretty girls. Small Sadie entices the crocodile with her secret. She is a curse eater, gifted with the ability to alter people's fates by cleaning their houses. So that's kind of the setup for the book. It has a romantic element to it, and I enjoyed the book, and after reading this, I would like to go back and read the other books in this Raybearer series. Next up, we have what might be my favorite book all year, A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. I may not be saying any of these names correctly. A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. So this is a sci-fi book. It takes place in a sci-fi world which there is an empire who has colonialized and taken over many different planets and many different worlds. Our protagonist comes from a small space station that has not been consumed into the empire. They're independent, and they do not, they have not been taken over by this empire. Our protagonist is a new diplomat who has been sent from her space station to go live in the empire. And there are some mysterious circumstances surrounding the previous diplomats. They don't know what happened to him, if he's still alive, if he's dead. Did he get, what happened to him? Why did they need a new diplomat? I, of course, really liked the mystery, and there's a lot of political intrigue in this book that I really enjoyed. But beyond that, what really made this such a great read for me were two things. One is that the independent space station, has developed a technology that allows people's memories essentially to be downloaded, and then once that person has passed away, that memories are downloaded and they're kind of put into a new person. And so once I become of age and let's say I become a pilot for the space station, I will get a person essentially downloaded into my brain, and I will have to, our memories and our personality and everything like that will have to mesh together and kind of make a hybrid person out of the two of us. So that is one big aspect of the story, which is very unique and really interesting. And the other one is that the Empire itself has a very distinct and well articulated culture that is very, very based on epic poetry. The author of this book clearly has a background in linguistics and a love for language, and has clearly given thought to cultural assimilation, what it means to have your culture subsumed by another entity, what it is like to be a person coming to a new place and that they are enamored with, but having culture shock. It was really just a really, really well done sci-fi novel. I also read the second one in the series, which is A Desolation Called Peace, and that one, in my opinion, was not anything special. That was your standard sci-fi novel. Not that great. But I very, very highly recommend A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. Okay. The last book that I have today is back in fantasy again. This is A Master of Djinn by P. Jelly Clark. But it's one of these combinations. It is a fantasy mystery novel, which I've been really into this year. It takes place in an alternate version of Cairo. In the recent past, someone has made a connection to the supernatural world and allowed all of the supernatural beings that inhabit folklore to come through and essentially become a part of modern life. So this is kind of a steampunk. There's a lot of mechanical, steam-powered things going on. There's also a lot of magic with the jinn that reside in Egypt. This is, I think, a mystery detective novel. It has our detective, who is a very unique character. She is one of the only women detectives working for the Ministry of, the Ministry for dealing with magical stuff. The thing I didn't understand before reading this book is that there is a previous, I think, short story or novella perhaps that takes place before this one. But I don't think you really need to have... They give enough context in the novel for you to understand what happened in that previous story. This brotherhood of white Englishmen are all mysteriously killed in circumstances that must be magical. And now there is this intruder who is causing chaos in Cairo. It's kind of, it's a mystery. They uncover facts. They have clues. They need to follow up on them. There's a fair amount of action involved. It's in a unique setting, which I really enjoyed. I don't know that much about Cairo in the 1920s. Obviously, they did not really have mechanical camels, but it's an interesting world to imagine, and I enjoyed the mystery. I thought it was well done. And that's it. Those are the 7 books that I wanted to share with you that I really enjoyed reading in the second half of 2024. I wish everyone a happy new year. I hope you all have a happy and prosperous 2025, and I will see you again soon. Bye.